Let's take a closer look at how to start a conversation with ChatGPT, ask basic questions, interact with ChatGPT through voice and text, and get familiar with ChatGPT responses. As covered in Lesson 2, to start a conversation with ChatGPT, you can simply type a message or question into the chat window on the ChatGPT platform. ChatGPT will generate a response based on the content and context of your message. You can also interact with ChatGPT through voice commands if your device supports it. When asking ChatGPT basic questions, it's important to be clear and concise. ChatGPT is able to understand a wide range of topics and contexts, but it's always best to keep your questions simple and straightforward. For example, you can ask ChatGPT for information about a particular topic or ask for recommendations on a specific product or service. Interacting with ChatGPT through voice and text is easy and intuitive. If you're using voice commands, simply speak clearly and wait for ChatGPT to respond. If you're typing your messages, try to be as clear and concise as possible to ensure that ChatGPT can generate an accurate response. As you chat with ChatGPT, you'll start to get familiar with its responses. ChatGPT is able to generate human-like responses that are contextually appropriate and relevant to the conversation. You may notice that ChatGPT's responses become more personalized over time as it learns more about your preferences and interests. Chatting with ChatGPT is a simple and intuitive process. By starting a conversation, asking basic questions, interacting with ChatGPT through voice and text, and getting familiar with its responses, you can get the most out of this powerful conversational AI tools.
So, let's jump back into ChatGPT and try it out. All right, we are back over in ChatGPT and we're ready to try out a new type of questioning. So when we were last in ChatGPT during Lesson 2, we were asking ChatGPT questions about itself. And that kind of gave us an introduction and some history about ChatGPT. Well, now we're going to start asking ChatGPT to assist us with tasks and to just kind of get a feel for the possibilities that ChatGPT has. We're also going to ask some questions that, if you've been following along, you'll probably know that it won't be able to answer. However, I did throw in a couple of questions to ask ChatGPT that it wouldn't be able to answer correctly because I want you to be able to identify the limitations of ChatGPT before we get too far along in the course. So let's get started. This time, let's start by asking ChatGPT to tell us a joke. All right. And here we've asked ChatGPT to tell us a joke. And the joke is, why did the tomato turn red? Because it saw the salad dressing. Ha! All right. Next, let's ask ChatGPT what the weather is like today. Now, remember that ChatGPT is no longer online. So, this is a question that we're asking to identify the limitations of ChatGPT. And here, ChatGPT again reminds us that it is a language model and that it does not have access to real-time weather information. So, it's very important that you understand that while ChatGPT does have the ability to suggest that you check the weather in your location and make suggestions about different weather apps, it cannot actually access real-time information. So please keep that in mind when you start to interact with ChatGPT. All right, next, we're going to ask ChatGPT to recommend a good book to read. So we've said, can you recommend a good book to read? ChatGPT's response is, of course. There are many great books out there. And now it's giving us a list of different books that cover a range of genres. So again, while this information is limited to information up until 2021, you're still able to get a large amount of information from ChatGPT that you might find helpful. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and ask our next question. And the next question that we're going to ask is a question whose answer should not change. So it is, what is the capital of France? And it immediately begins to generate not only a response, but it generates a response and a little information about the response. So here, yes, Paris is the capital of France, but it also gives us some information. Okay, so not only is it telling us the correct answer, but here it's also giving us information on what it's famous for and a little background on the information. So on the correct answer. All right, so next we're going to ask ChatGPT, how many countries are in the world? And again, it's giving us a response, but it's interesting that it actually also includes the fact that there is a debate. There is somewhat of a debate, and there is no universally recognized definition what a country is. So it gives itself the ability to have the most accurate answer in its response. And then it also gives us kind of a reference or a resource that it got its information from. So basically it says, according to the United Nations, there are currently 195 recognized sovereign states in the world. All right, so next we'll ask it a philosophical question and see how it responds. What is the meaning of life? All right, so ChatGPT responds by telling us that the meaning of life is a philosophical and existential question that has been pondered by people for centuries. So it's telling us that it's not an easy question to answer, and it tells us that its response will come from a philosophical perspective. So again, it's giving us some background information as to why it's going to respond the way that it responds. And keep in mind that these questions that we're asking it at this point is for us to basically get a feel for how ChatGPT will respond, and then also for us to get used to the kinds of questions that we can ask. So next, we'll ask it to try to translate some information. So we're just going to see if we can have ChatGPT translate a phrase into Spanish. And let's start with something simple like hello. Certainly, hello can be translated into hola in Spanish. Awesome. Now let's ask, because we want to keep in mind that ChatGPT does maintain, or it will allow you to continue to ask questions about the same topic as long as it's relevant and appropriate. So here we should be able to still ask it to translate another word into Spanish. So let's see if it does. Another word or phrase. So we're going to say, how are you? Okay, so we'll need to, at this point, ask it to translate the phrase, how are you, into Spanish. And this time I'm going to go ahead and put quotation marks around it. All right. And it has translated the phrase, how are you, to ¿Cómo estás? Again, in Spanish. So you can use ChatGPT to translate, and we will cover later in the section how to translate longer and more complex information from one language to the next. However, at this point, note that ChatGPT can translate from one language to the next. So let's do hello. Let's do into French. So I'm just going to copy this and change it to French. Oh, and even though here, notice that I did spell French wrong, but it did understand that I had a typo and it was able to spell it correctly. So it does give you the ability to make mistakes in your spelling, and it will catch it and it will still respond as long as you're semi close to the spelling of the word. So, and here again, not only did it translate how are you in French, but it also gave us both the formal translation as well as the informal translation. All right, so now we're going to ask it for the latest news on COVID-19. And keep in mind that it did have the ability to track information. So it does recognize the date, and while it does not have access to information beyond 2021, let's go ahead and double check this with Google. Again, this information seems to be, while the date is correct, the numbers here are a little skewed. So just looking at the response from Google, at this point, the numbers are a lot higher than what is stated here. So just again to keep in mind the fact that the information that you will receive could be partially correct and could have some information that is correct, and while it has the rest of the information could be incorrect. So let's start by asking ChatGPT to tell us what 2 plus 2 is. Let's start by asking it if it can do math. Can you do math? All right. So yes, ChatGPT says that it is able to do math. So now let's ask it, what is 2 plus 2? All right. So now it tells us that 2 plus 2 is 4. Now, the difference between the way that we are adding 2 plus 2 here. So here we're saying that 2 plus 2 is 4. All right, so now let's go ahead and get a slightly more difficult math equation. And let's see if we can get ChatGPT to help us with some high school level math. So here we're asked to solve a variable, and I'm just going to copy this. Let's go with this one. All right, and we're going to hit enter. And it tells us that x is a over bc, and this answer is correct. So yes, ChatGPT can help you with math, and it can help you with mathematical equations. It can help you with simple math, and this one is slightly more advanced. Let's see if we can have an even more advanced mathematical equation. All right, here comes our next math problem. All right, and the nice thing about it is that it has broken down the steps, so it didn't just give us the answer, but it showed its work. So that is always a good thing, because that means that if you were using ChatGPT to help you with mathematical problems in school, and you needed to use ChatGPT, it would also allow you to show how you come up with the answer as well. At this point, we're going to go back over to our lecture. And before we do, let's just kind of recap what we went over here in this second lesson. In this second hands-on activity, we were able to have ChatGPT tell us a joke. We were able to identify limitations on ChatGPT, which is the fact that it does not have current information and it's not able to get the weather for this specific date. It is also able to give us recommendations for good books. It was able to tell us who won the Super Bowl, but not who won the latest Super Bowl, the most recent Super Bowl, that is. It was also able to give us information that was both factual and also information that was debatable when we asked the capital of France, and then also when we asked how many countries there are in the world. We also asked it a philosophical question, which was the meaning of life, and that is here where it's given us some different perspectives. And then we asked it to translate a phrase into Spanish as well as French. It was able to translate our phrase into both Spanish and French, which was great. It gave us some information that was not quite accurate about COVID-19. It probably, because of its algorithm, it was able to give us the current date, but the information that it added was incorrect. So these numbers have gone up since the last time that it checked, it looks like. And the last thing that we were able to do was mathematical equations, which it did really good at. So now let's go back into the lecture, and we're going to go over into lesson 4, where now we're going to start talking about some advanced features of chatting with ChatGPT.